Welcome back to Abundant Culture Podcast,
where we dissect the mindsets and tactics of the true beasts of business.
People like Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, and Warren Buffett.
All to create a blueprint to experience life more abundantly.
Hey everyone, I'm so glad to have you back today. What would you do if you met somebody who started in real estate just 2 years ago and today has a massive portfolio of over 1,500 units? You heard me right, folks, 1,500 units. Well, today's guest actually owns that many units. And not only that, he's the founder of the Multifamily Investor Nation, which is a nationwide group of over 12,000 people that he helps educate every single day on how to properly invest in multifamily real estate assets. So get ready to consume as much knowledge as possible from our good friend, Dan Handford.
Hi, Dan. Thank you again for coming on to the Abundant Culture Podcast. When we saw you at John's Meetup, it was maybe like maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah,
we were like, oh yes, we have to have him on the podcast. I think we left early and we watched the Facebook Live and we were so excited to hear what you had to say. And I am so excited for our audience to also hear what you have to say. So before we get into that, can you explain your backstory a little bit? How did you get into business?
Sure. Yeah. So it depends on which business we're referring to, because I do have a couple of them, but I'll kind of tell you a little bit about my background as growing up and then kind of going into the businesses that I have now. So I've always been kind of really interested in business and entrepreneurship. I mean, I remember growing up and selling, candy door to door and mowing lawns and selling Cutco knives when I went into high school and stuff like that. And, even a pressure cleaning business that I had. And so I always remember always wanting to be, selling something or, doing some form of business. And even my parents had a business at that time as well. And I was growing up. And so I learned a lot about what to do and even what not to do in business from their businesses. And so right when I went into college, I started a business selling spine models. And it was a company called Shop Anatomical, and we still have it today, shopanatomical.com. And we sell skeletons and skulls and brains and hearts. And that's why you see over here on my shelf, I have a skeleton or a
that's really cool.
There. And it's because, that's what my business is. That's kind of really what got me launched into the success that I have, is starting that business in school and it, allowing me to be able to start my practice debt free as well. So my background is that I'm a chiropractor by trade, and then I actually morphed into owning medical clinics where we don't even do chiropractic anymore. But started the selling the spine models in chiropractic school, launched the business into a 7-figure a year business that's been doing that for the last 12 to 13 years now, and it's completely passive. And then I have another set of medical clinics that I started after that. We have 5 of them now that we have located here in South Carolina. So I'm located here in Columbia, South Carolina. And then the money that I was making off of those clinics, and as well as the other businesses, were causing me to have to write a lot of money to the government in taxes.
Yeah.
And so, by default, I was trying to find a way to try to reduce my taxable liability and doing it the right way, right? Legally. And so, it's really started to investing in real estate. And that's really when I fell in love with multifamily real estate investing, is because for me, was the tax advantages of being able to invest and then, doing some additional things to be able to accelerate the depreciation with some bonus depreciation, allowing us to offset our taxes. So that's kind of in a nutshell about my story and my background and how I got to the point now of running this multifamily syndication group called passiveinvesting.com. Then I also have an education arm to it called the Multifamily Investor Nation.
Nice. So one question we definitely have to ask, because of kind of what you said at John's Meetup, you do a lot of syndications and you raise capital for those syndications. What was the day where you realized that you had to start kind of raising capital for real estate, and kind of what influenced that decision to do that?
Yeah. So I knew earlier on that, I wanted to do something big because I had already been doing, really big things with the business and the practices and stuff like that. And so I actually stepped away from doing that full time to focus on the multifamily real estate investing. And, when you first get started, you can think, you think you can raise millions and millions of dollars because you have this huge network and stuff. And, I kind of thought that, and my first deal, I actually co-sponsored with somebody, and I'm thinking I can just knock it out of the park, and it was very hard just to raise that first $500,000,
Yeah.
And so to me, that was really the first time that I really had like an eye-opening experience of I've got to do something to be able to open my network with more investors, because even though I had a lot of people in my network at the time, I needed more because I needed to be able to scale and grow. And every investor is at a different point in time where they may or may not have the cash available to be able to invest, or being able to invest with their IRA or their 401k that they may be self-directing. So, I mean, I think for me, that was the first point in time where I had to raise money and find money and realize that I didn't have as much money as I needed to be able to want people to be able to invest in that project.
Yeah. So when you started investing, did you start using your cash first, or was it like when you went into it, you just knew like, all right, I'm going to need, extra cash to do this?
So when I first got into it, I haven't done anything smaller than a couple $1 million worth of project. I think our smallest project was about a little over $3 million. Yeah. And so I knew right off the bat that I wanted to do syndication. Mm-hmm. And so most of our deals right now are between about 15, 20 million. And so we're always bringing on investors. Smallest deal we've done has had 35 investors. The most is about a little over 100, like 110 investors in one project.
Nice.
And so that's why I knew I needed those investors, because I wanted to provide a vehicle for other people that were in my network that needed the ability to invest in real estate for the same tax advantages, but they couldn't just walk away from their practice of their business because either they didn't want to, or they couldn't, right? Because they just didn't have the things set up properly. And so I wanted to be able to provide that as an option for them. So they have this fear of missing out of investing in real estate, but they don't have the time, and they don't really want to do wholesaling or flipping or, a small duplex or something like that, but they still wanted to put it with somebody that they trust to be able to manage it properly. And so that's really what we were doing.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
And can you tell me a little bit about, what would you say to somebody who maybe has a fear of starting big like you? Because I talked to John not too long ago, and he talks about, some of the pros and, some of the cons with starting big. But he's one of those people that says, hey, if you could do 100 units, just do 100 units, don't start with the duplex if you don't have to. Can you speak to maybe those people who want to get big in this thing, but they just maybe are having some doubts or maybe some fears about that?
Sure. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have to start to ask people when they got started, which was easier. Was it easier to close a 10 unit or a duplex, I guess, or even a single family home versus a $10 million plus asset? And for me, I feel like it's a whole lot easier to close the larger deals than it is the smaller ones. It was actually harder to close that little over that $3 million deal that we did than it was one that we're closing in about a week and a half, which is about almost an $18 million deal. I mean, wow. The debt is easier, the financing is easier, and it's even easier, not easy, but it's easier to raise the capital for those larger deals, because the larger the deal, the safer the investment it is for that investor. At least that's what they think, right? And so they're more willing to invest in those larger assets because of that kind of that safety and security blanket. But I will say that I have talked to people in the past where they're like, you need to start small, you need to get your bruises and cut your knees and things like that with a smaller deal first, so that you can instead of bringing on somebody else's money and possibly losing somebody else's money, which can be worse than losing your own money, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Certainly.
To try to get your feet wet, I guess, if you will, in some of these other smaller assets. And to me, I would say if you didn't start with a mentor who was already at the level that you wanted to be, then yes, I would suggest that. I would suggest, paying the stupid tax on your own instead of paying somebody else for that tax, right? And so, but for me, I'm a big believer in paying for that knowledge. and paying for that mentorship and that coaching that you can really not have to take those steps and not have to, get those bruises, if you will. And if you don't have some form of success in your background when you do that, it might be a little bit more challenging, but it's not impossible. You can still do it. You might have to bring somebody else on your team that you can partner with that might have to help you in certain areas. But for me, a lot of the people that invest with our group invest with us because they know that at the end of the day, we are buying businesses, not real estate. These are really businesses that have real estate attached to them, but they're treated like real estate. And so for me, buying businesses and running businesses is like what I do all the time. I've been doing it for a long time. And so even back in 2007 and 8, when the market crashed, I was building a business and it was growing year over year over year in the downturn. And so for people who ask me, have you ever owned real estate in the downturn? I'm like, no, not really, but I sure know how to run a business, and that's what we're buying. We're not buying real estate. And so, I feel like you have to have somebody on your team I think you should have somebody on your team that has some form of background in business that you can call on and get that advice, because you have to know how to, run a business from a marketing perspective, but also putting systems and procedures and processes in place to make sure that things are running smoothly in a good economy as well as in a bad economy.
That is so key.
And I love that perspective because we actually just started getting into buying like businesses. And before we thought of it as real estate versus buying businesses, but really like what you just said, it's the same thing. So I really love like the way that you explain that.
Yeah. There's no other business that you can buy that gives you the advantages of the depreciation and stuff like that, like these types of assets do. But literally, if you think about the whole structure, you are buying a business.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, you wanted me to go?
I thought you were going to go. You just started talking.
Yeah. So another question we had is, you talked about some people saying, oh, have you ever owned real estate through a actual downturn? What are some of the other common objections that you get when you're going out raising capital? Like, what are some of the first objections you get to maybe some of the objections that you still get to this day? And I feel like our viewers would love to hear that because, when I tell people I raised a really small amount of capital, but when I tell people about it, their eyes kind of, open up really wide, like, wow, you were able to get that amount of money from like an individual. And it's like, yeah. And when they think about it for themselves, they kind of feel like, oh no, there's no way that I could do that. Or like, I wouldn't know how to start or something like that. So kind of explain some of those common objections and how you kind of answer that.
Sure. Well, one of the common ones, which is ones we just covered, was about, have you ever owned it during multiple cycles, mm-hmm. and so that's one of them. One of the other ones that I get quite often I'm a big believer in, whenever you get asked a question, you just answer it honestly. And because the more you dance around an answer, the more that investor is going to get cold feet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather you just answer honestly. And so one of the questions that I get very often is, have you ever gone full cycle on a deal? Like, have you ever actually, closed a deal initially, implemented the value plan, and actually exited the deal successfully? And with our group being as new as they are, we're only in our second year. We're doing great things, and we're moving really fast. But have we actually exited a deal and done full cycle? And we have not. Mm-hmm. And so I'll usually tell investors, no, we have not. Yeah, that's literally my response to them, is like, no, we have not.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And like, it's funny because almost every single one that has asked that, they've invested with our group.
Yeah.
They just want to know. I'm like, no, we haven't. But, and then I go back to at the end of the day, I know how to run a business. So and that's what we're buying, is businesses. So those would be probably two of the most common. I mean, obviously, we don't really get a lot of, I guess another one would be probably our fee structure. So we do 8% preferred returns with 70-30 splits with our investors. And then we have 2% acquisition fee, 1% asset management fee, and then a 2% disposition fee, or a 1% disposition fee when we sell. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes investors might look at that and go, oh, it's too expensive. That's too many fees. But, 99% of our investors have no problem with it. And so occasionally we will have an investor that'll say, I think your fees are too expensive. And I'll just reply to them and say, well, unfortunately, I don't think we're a good fit for you because my expenses aren't getting any cheaper. And so my fees are what they are. And most of our investors have no problems with it because they understand that, it is expensive to run these types of syndications, and you have to be paid for the work that we're doing. And it's not always just the work that we're doing on the one deal that we're getting paid for. We're losing, a dozen deals before we get one. We put hundreds of hours into those deals we lost that we'll never get paid on. And so that's why those fees might seem a little bit high when you look at it from a deal by deal basis.
Yeah. And one thing, I don't know if you thought about it, but one thing I try to talk to people about when it comes to fees is a lot of people should take a look at the fees in their retirement accounts.
Very true.
The ones you just listed were fine compared to those, because a lot of those fees could be astronomical, and they're on an annual basis all the time. So
based on the entire portfolio size.
Exactly. Yep. Which is huge, but that's neither here nor there.
You got to start charging some additional fees. No.
You probably could
right.
get away with it.
So how are you finding the individuals, or I guess maybe how do they find you to invest in your deals? And how does that conversation start?
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually am doing a webinar tonight on this very topic about finding and locating high net worth investors. And it is a webinar we're doing tonight, and we have a little over 400 people already registered for it. And so I'm going to be diving in for about an hour, going over a lot of these different strategies and stuff. But if you want to shoot me over an email, Dan@multifamilyinvestornation.com, I'll send you a link to the replay, because I'm sure we'll have it available for you to be able to give out to your audience and your listeners if you'd like to too. So we will be recording that for them. But I would say the biggest thing I always teach is making sure that you are putting yourself constantly inside of rooms where you're not the only one looking for the money, right? You want to put yourself in a position where you're the only one looking for it. And so you kind of have to shift your mindset a little bit and think about what they do in the financial services industry. So thinking outside of our own industry of multifamily and real estate and going, what do other people do that are looking for money do? Because they've been doing it for a whole lot longer than we have. So go to some of those trade conferences, read some of those books, try to figure out what they're doing. And a lot of them are doing a lot of local boots on the ground networking, joining local charity organizations and leadership positions. And one strategy I heard recently, which I'm going to start implementing, is actually getting a copy of the newspaper, whether it be physical or virtually on your iPad or whatever, and start to look for people in your market that are what are called movers and shakers, and start to reach out to them and connect with them and start to build those relationships, because those are the people that you're going to want to be in front of. And the conversation, to kind of go what you're talking about, Jasmine, is it's not all about just going up to somebody and saying, "Hey, would you give me $50,000 or $100,000 to invest in my deal?"
If only it was that easy.
It works. I wish it was that easy, but it's really it's called investor relations for a reason, and it's because it's a relationship business. We have to take time to get to know people first, because people will only invest with you if they know, like, and trust you. And so in order for you to get people to really be on board, they have to meet all three of those things. And not only do they have to know, like, and trust you, they have to know, like, and trust the deal. And then they also have to know, like, and trust you in that deal. Because in one of the biggest hurdles you'll have in the very beginning, if you're new into this, is people thinking that, oh, you're that, engineer, or you're that school teacher, or you're that plumber or electrician or whoever you are. And they don't think of you as that real estate professional. So you have to do something to build that credibility. And that's when you start to join and co-sponsor with other people to build that credibility list. And so you can leverage their credibility to your existing network. And that's how, because there's a lot of people that will know, like, and trust you right now, right? Like your mom, your dad, your family, your friends that you've known for a while. Mm-hmm. They know, like, and trust you. And they might even know, like, and trust the deal. But they don't know, like, and trust you in the deal, because they don't really know that you're that good at it, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of money to just throw out there and just on a whim to hope that it goes well. And so, and then, I'll throw a question back to you two is of that know, like, and trust, which one is the most important?
I actually don't know.
I would think trust, because I mean, you could like someone, but like you were just saying, they might not trust you in the deal because you might not have that knowledge.
I would probably say just because, I mean, there's people that I know like are probably really good at what they do, or at least decent enough at it. And I'm actually going through this right now, and I cannot stand them. And like, even if there was like a decent amount of money on the table, I would still be looking at them like, I just don't want to do it with this guy. So I don't know, but that's what I would get.
So both of you bring some great points up, but you're both wrong.
Really?
Because get this, if nobody actually knows you, then they never have an opportunity to like or trust you. So a lot of times
I didn't think of that.
Always trying to be this likable person or being this trustworthy person, which both of those are extremely important, but we also have to always be thinking about making sure that people know us.
Yeah.
And so you actually said it in your explanation of like that, I know these people. Yeah. You knew them first before you made that opinion of them. So you have to, think about that know, like, and trust, and really focus on networking and getting out in the community and really opening yourself up to be able to be known so that people do have the opportunity to like or trust you. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be people that don't like you. There's going to be people that don't trust you, but they're all going to hopefully know you, right? So they have that opportunity to be able to like or trust you, but you have to get your name out there and have to get yourself out there to get to the point of them being able to know, like, and trust you.
That is so true.
That is.
That's a good point.
As you were saying that, I was thinking, we went to the Grant Cardone conference earlier this year, and
I was there as well.
Oh, awesome.
Really?
Yep.
Man, I wish we would have met you there. We had a good time.
And I don't know if you remember, but he was saying, like, because, he puts out like maybe 2 or 3 emails a day. And he was saying that he doesn't care if people are deleting them. All that matters is that they see the email so that he's like more familiar in their mind. So like, I thought of that instantly, as you said, like they have to know you, because he's all about people knowing him.
And it's amazing at how many people don't know him. I mean, I talk to people all the time. They're like, oh, I don't know who that is,
Yeah.
But he's everywhere.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's like you could... I always used to kind of think that there is a such thing as marketing too much. But every time I get on my Instagram and see this guy, I was like, there's no way. Like, and that's maybe why it's like you got these group of people that love him, and then you got these other group of people that can't stand his guts. And there's like nobody in between. You either just really like him as a person or you just hate him.
Yeah.
That's probably why. But another question I kind of wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying before about know, like, and trust people, how people in your family can know, like, and trust you now as who you are. A question I have is, what was kind of your experience when it came to, I guess, doing business within your family or raising capital from family members? Because I remember it was so crazy. Like, it was somebody in my family who basically told me I was going to fail at this. It's a scam. It's blah, blah, like just all types of stuff. And then like now he was like, oh, I'm going to get a line of credit. And when I do, I'll do a deal with you guys. So like, what was your experience with that? Because I'm always curious to see how people's families react to their like career change in the real estate.
You know how much I've raised from my family?
How much?
0.
Cool. I mean, I haven't either. Like almost, but not quite. So
I mean, and I think part of it is because I know there's not my family actually does not have that much money to invest.
Yeah.
But I feel like lately though, I've had some questions from them because they're starting to see now the stuff that we're doing, and they're getting that same FOMO, that fear of missing out. And they're starting to ask questions. So what are you doing again? And so I never really went to them and told them what I was doing and how I was doing. I mean, I'd bring it up when we'd get together or whatever, but I would never like try to, pitch them the deal or present them with the deal. It was really just, hey, when it's time, they'll come to me. And so it's just, nobody in my family per se has actually, well, Nope. No, I'm trying to think about my wife's side of the family, and they haven't either yet. So,
Okay.
but I never really reached out to them. So I just stayed with my own, friends and my own network that I had, and then continued to expand and build upon that. And that's really how we've been able to raise the equity for our deals.
For sure.
So, is that kind of the reason that you started the Multifamily Investor Nation, like to expand your network?
Absolutely. So I'll get a little personal with you. I started that group while I was bathing in the bathtub. So after the kids and my wife sometimes goes to bed, I'll usually, go in the bathtub and just relax, put the bubbles on and stuff like that. And that's where I get a lot of my ideas. Is just sitting there relaxing. And I had the idea of creating this group. I remember sitting in there. Don't picture me, please. I remember sitting there and going. I was looking at some stuff on my phone or whatever, and kind of doing some research. I usually will like read something or or listen to some podcasts or books or whatever. And I was sitting there going, I wonder if anybody has ever started like a multifamily investor nation type thing. And I literally remember opening up GoDaddy and looking for the domain to see if it was available, and it was available. And I registered it while I was there in the hot tub, and then immediately went and registered Apartment Investor Nation just in case somebody wanted to, steal the other idea of it. And so I registered both of those domains, and then started to leverage that group and grow that group via the meetup.com platform. And we now have 50 meetup groups, actually just going to start 3 more today. We just approved 3 more cities to approve to open up. And so we'll have 53 at the end of today or tomorrow that are across the country. We have co-organizers. We meet the first Monday of every month in cities all across the country. And we're constantly looking for new co-organizers to build that brand and things like that. But that is true. That is one of the main reasons why I did it, was to find some passive investors. And, my whole philosophy with, trying to find passive investors is really to try to provide as much value and give and serve as much as I can. And, I don't have a paid coaching program. I'm not planning on doing it. I don't have the time, nor do I need the money to be able to do it. So I don't want to do it. I get a lot of people that ask me if I do it, and I'm like, no, I don't. That's probably why I get asked to speak at a lot of events as well, is because I don't have a coaching program that I'm trying to pitch or sell. It's really just trying to provide as much value as possible. And I think that's also one of the reasons why, our group is now getting a lot of well-known syndicators that have retirement accounts that they can't invest in their own deals, but they can invest in ours, and they'll actually, invest in our deals with their self-directed accounts because of how well-known our group has become.
Wow.
Awesome.
And it's really cool too, because I picked up a nugget, and I don't even think you were trying to give out that nugget, but I picked up another one. And I just now realized that people can't use their own self-directed retirement plan to invest in their own deals. So they have to be putting them somewhere else. So I never thought to raise capital
that's
that way.
The power of relationships.
Jeez, I never thought about that. That's gold.
I thought you were going to say something about the hot tub, but no.
Well,
actually,
eventually,
when you said that at John's meetup, I'm like, wow, this sounds really nice. Like, I really want to get in the tub and get a glass of wine right now.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's actually really good. And so, what kind of steered your thinking towards making kind of like an online meetup? Because honestly, I don't see a lot of those. Mm-hmm. You're like, I think one of the first people that I've heard that was doing it. And it sounds like a really unique, but very good idea to do. What kind of made you say, all right, I'm not going to do this in person, I'm going to do this online?
Yeah, well, I'll sit in the hot tub. No, just kidding. So I actually, all of our monthly meetups are on the first Monday of every month, and they're in person, and they have local co-organizers across the country that help us host these. But then twice a year, we actually have a virtual summit. We call it the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. MFIN Summit. And at those summits, it's all virtual. So we don't have any live events or anything like that. I mean, it's all live, but there's nothing in person. Yeah. And it's bringing 50 to 70 speakers together during a 3-day conference that's all virtual, all done via Zoom webinars and the Zoom platform. And we were able to bring on some pretty high level people that we wouldn't have otherwise because of that platform, and allow people to learn without having to go fly or stay in hotels and spend a bunch of money and stuff. They can just kind of do it from the comfort of their home. All the sessions are recorded during the event. So we don't have any pre-recorded sessions. Every speaker has to come live. And the reason why we require them to come live is because the whole point of it is to allow them to be able to have questions and answers at the end of their session about their topic, so that the listeners and the attendees can actually engage with them. And there's no really need to kind of see how many people can engage. And I was actually just talking to my assistant, Stacy, about this, that we've actually the last 2 days, or the last day, I've had 2 people reach out to me and tell me that they were in multifamily because of my summit, which is kind of cool, to kind of know that the one guy closed a deal and he said it was because of your summit in January that I closed that deal. And, I have another guy that actually today I was on his podcast and he said, I wouldn't be doing this podcast if it wasn't for your summit. So it's really kind of neat to kind of see how those are impacting other people's lives and improving them. And, yes, those people might not be investing in my deals, but they're able to go out there and do it on their own. And what I will say, what I have done that I feel has done really well, that was kind of a side benefit that I never really thought of, was the fact that all of this content and value and things like that I'm providing, I have had investors call me and they said, I want to invest with you. And I've actually asked multiple people in the space about you, and they say really good things about you. And so it's a kind of a side benefit of, like, I know people have never even met me before in person, and they're talking good things about me in this multifamily space. And so it just helps my credibility all in all. And that's what I encourage other people when they're first getting started, is go out there and provide value. What you guys are doing right now with this platform that you have, it's providing value to other people, and it'll just continue to build your credibility as well.
Yes, for sure. So another question I have is, we're talking about multifamily real estate mostly. So what kind of makes a deal stand out to you? Because I saw on your website you invest in various different cities and markets, and I kind of want to ask, like, okay, what do you like about those markets, and what do you like about the deals that you actually like to go after?
So 2 questions in one, basically.
Yeah. So I would say that, the types of assets that we're looking at acquiring are B-class assets. And so we're not looking at C-class, we're not looking at A-class, we're really focused on the B-class assets. And there's a strategic reason why. So it's not just because we like B-class. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd love to buy all the A-classes if it all made sense. But
yeah.
The main reason why we like the B-class assets is because, obviously the asset classes are sometimes subjective, but typically people who are living in a B-class asset do not want to live in a C-class asset because of the resident population that's there. And so if there's some sort of downturn in the economy or shift or correction or whatever, those people in the B-class assets will work a second, third, or fourth job to make the rent so that they don't have to move to the C-class property. The people who live in the A-class properties, guess what? They will give up their little niceties and amenities, and they're fine to go live in a B-class property. And so you have this kind of sweet spot of the A classes moving down to the Bs and the Bs staying at the Bs because they have a motivation not to be in the Cs. And so you have this nice little sweet spot even during the downturn of an economy. And so even if you look back in 2008 and you see the overall, multifamily market, yes, the property values went down in multifamily, but the income of the property didn't. And so if you could hold through that downturn and your income stayed fairly steady, then you could still meet your debt service, you could still meet your expenses, and you can still return money to investors. Yeah. And so to me, that's really the sweet spot is in that B class market. Now, as far as what really makes me tick is when it comes to investing in a deal, to me, one of the most important things is the market, because I see a lot of people that come and they'll say, "Oh, I have this really good deal," but I'm like, "Where is that?" If I have to look at it and go, "Where is that?" and they can't answer it very easily, like, "Oh, it's a submarket of Dallas," or "It's a submarket of whatever big city," then I'm not going to invest in it. And a lot of investors won't either, because they don't want to invest in something that they don't know, they haven't heard of before. Yeah. And it's not just how popular the city is, but it's really about the market dynamics. And I want to see a lot of blue chip companies that are surrounding that particular property and in that market, because it's those blue chip companies that will provide the stability during some form of correction or downturn. And so for me, it's really the market, and it's not just the large market, but it's the actual sub-market. It's very hyper local to that particular sub-market in that particular market, because there are certain markets, you look at something somewhere like, Atlanta, Georgia, there are sub-markets in Atlanta, Georgia that are doing terrible. Like I would never invest in them, at least not right now, unless they turn around. But there are some markets, and most of the sub-markets in Atlanta are doing phenomenally well, and they're growing. But you have to look at the dynamics of that market on a very micro level and not just look at it from a macro standpoint.
Definitely. That totally makes sense.
Yep.
Oh, I was going to let you ask the next question again. I'll ask. Trying to wrap you up here before we take too much of your time. Is there anything that you hate doing in your real estate business? And the reason I ask this is because I realized that, like, no matter how great your company is or your business or your industry, there's always that one thing that I feel like a lot of people would say, oh, if I could just get somebody to do this for me, that would be great. So we kind of ask that question so that, maybe if somebody wants to work with you in some type of way, they may be able to offer that service.
Well, the one thing that I hate to do, I already have somebody doing for me, so that's actually a good thing, because I did learn early on that if I was doing something that I didn't like to do, then I probably wouldn't last that long in it, and it wouldn't be getting done as well as it should be getting done. And so I learned very on to delegate some of that stuff in my business career. And so for me, the underwriting piece I do not like. I like looking at the finished product and figuring out and kind of seeing how I can, fix it or modify it or make it more conservative or whatever to make the deal work better. But I don't like taking the T12 and the rent roll and putting it in the little cell blocks and all this kind of stuff. I'd rather pay somebody else to do that and then look at the finished product and trying to find the holes in the underwriting from that standpoint.
I think I'd have to agree.
Yeah. So did you learn that and then outsource it, or did you just outsource it from the beginning? I
would highly recommend anything that you don't like to do, always learn how to do it. And that way you have the understanding of the process behind it. Because even if I just started to look at the finished product, I wouldn't really know what numbers affected which numbers. And so for me, I wanted to know it in and out. And so I know how the underwriting works. I can do it myself, and I can do it. But it's just one of those things, like you had mentioned, that I just really, I don't know, hate's a pretty strong word, but I just really don't like doing it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if I had to, I would do it, put a gun to my head, I can do it,
Yeah.
But if I can outsource it, I will. And instead of outsourcing it, we just, we have a partner, one of our managing partners is actually a financial analyst. And so he does all of our financial underwriting, and he loves and lives and breathes spreadsheets. So, he can certainly do that all day long. And he's the type of person that really likes, math and calculations. And, he really wanted to understand the IRR calculation, that internal rate of return. And everybody always just says, oh, just do it on a spreadsheet. And he really wanted to understand it. So he actually did it longhand. And I'm like, that is just nuts. I don't want to understand that.
I didn't even think that was possible.
It's possible.
Jeez. Because I've been trying to understand that for months, and I get the concept, but if you ask me to do the calculation, I wouldn't know what to tell you.
I can show you the Excel formula, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. So what is one thing that you want a listener or, a passive investor to kind of take away from this podcast, or even a syndicator?
Yes, that's two questions in one again. So you got from the passive investor standpoint, I would say that, having the ability to understand what you're investing in, I think is very important. And so even though you might not want to be fully active and actually, going and finding the deals and structuring the deals and finding the investors and putting everything together and working with the attorneys and the lenders and the yada, 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 you still should understand that entire process for you to be able to appreciate it a little bit more, but also for you to be better informed about the investment that you're about to make. And so for me, I would highly encourage any of the passive investors to plug themselves into some form of content platform so they can understand it more, dive into some books, really kind of, dive deep into the knowledge, into the language of multifamily so they understand it better. That's one of the things that we do for our passive investors is we try to educate them as much as we can so that when they're ready to invest, they can do that. And then from a syndicator standpoint, I would say hire a mentor, because for me, that's really what allowed me to be catapulted to where I am. Is I decided to go ahead and just bite the bullet and hire a mentor. And I wanted to find a mentor that I had direct access to, and I was fine to pay up for that, because I knew at the end of the day there was going to be some reason why I needed to make that one phone call that would really allow me to take myself to the next level. And I've made that phone call now twice, so it's been nice to be able to have that.
That is excellent.
That's great advice. So you are on the Abundant Culture podcast, and we have to ask every guest, how do you spread abundance?
Well, there's a lot of different ways about how I spread abundance, but I would say from the multifamily space, I think just starting and creating and continuing to produce content for the Multifamily Investor Nation, is, to me, now we haven't even been doing it for a year, and we're over about 13,000 members now. And I'm just starting to see a lot of people now that it's been almost a year. It'll be a year in September, October. And it's just amazing to me to be able to see the stories of people that we're helping and trying to transform their lives and creating that abundant mindset, if you will, through the multifamily space. And of course, locally, we donate to our local church and various organizations like that. We recently, the Multifamily Investor Nation actually just recently did a GoFundMe campaign for Whitney Sewell, who was in the process of adopting their third child.
Wow.
Actually, it's their third adoption, actually. And they had a bad experience with an adoption agency and lost some money. And so we decided to help raise some money for them and their group. And so that's one way. And actually, interestingly enough, the GoFundMe team actually donated too. Like, they actually saw the campaign, and their team voted to donate the fees back to Whitney. So it was kind of neat kind of see how that came to fruition as well.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
So how did that GoFundMe go? Did they reach the goal, or did they at least get close to the goal?
So the original goal was 60,000, and right now we're still kind of in the middle of it, but we've raised just at 20,000 right now. So people can certainly go to GoFundMe and not Google his name, but search his name if they want to donate to it. So certainly, absolutely.
Awesome.
That's amazing. And we just love hearing stories like that. Like, the world is supposed to be like a giving, abundant place. So that's like amazing. So we do want to wrap it up, because we know that you are a very busy man and you already gave us enough of your time. So for anyone that wants to maybe invest in a deal, or maybe learn from you, or just have some kind of conversation with you for whatever, how can they get in contact with you?
Sure. Yeah, there's two ways to do that. So as far as passive investing, you can go to passiveinvesting.com. So very easy to remember there, just passiveinvesting.com. On that page, you'll see some of the properties that we've acquired, but you'll also see some videos on there about our backgrounds and things like that. And then there'll be a place on there for you to fill out an investor form. So I'll actually have my assistant reach out to you. She will schedule you on my calendar, and we'll jump on a call together and discuss your investment goals and see if you're the right fit for our group. And then if you're interested in the multifamily education and investing space, you can go to multifamilyinvestornation.com. And we have a lot of information on there, links to the Meetup group platform, as well as to our closed Facebook group. And we do weekly webinars to our group as well, just like that webinar I was talking about tonight that we're going to be doing. We do those once a week. We either bring on a special guest, or I myself will do the content and just try to provide as much value to you as possible. So thank you guys so much for the invite to be able to come on to the Abundant Culture podcast, and looking forward to continuing to follow you guys.
Thank you so much. So that's all we have for today, folks. I hope you got as much value out of this as we did. Keep in mind, the only way we can improve is through constructive feedback. So remember to rate and review this episode. Also, you are not the only person that needs to know this super valuable information. So be sure to subscribe and share as well. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember to always spread abundance. Peace.